Hello and welcome to the Family at Work. Today's video is a video I didn't want to make. In fact, I stopped making YouTube videos altogether because of this incident. But I guess I'm kind of on the other side of it now, so I thought maybe I'll try to get back into this. And before I can even begin to explain how this was possible, if you're new to the channel, let me take a few minutes and tell you how we even got here, where we could even be in a position that something like this would happen to us. So 10 years ago, this month actually, well, close to this month, we purchased a campground in north central Ohio. My wife and I, we had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one on the way. We sold our house, took out all our life savings, and used it to purchase this RV park. Now, the campground was over 60 years old, and it was owned by a group of campers that had bought it like 20, 30 years prior. So it was never run as a business. Therefore, it never made money. All the tax returns were plus or minus a couple $1,000s. They were fine with that because they all just put in a couple $1,000s for the ownership of the park. So they got free camping out of it. And then whatever they were able to make off of charging people to stay, they used to pay people to, I guess, quasi take care of the property. So we got a great deal on it. It was a beautiful park. Well, it had a lot of potential, let me say that. It had been neglected for decades. Everything was a state of disrepair. The equipment, the facilities, the infrastructure, everything needed to be updated or replaced. But the price was right. We could afford it. We stretched ourselves a little bit, but that was our dream to do that. So we set out. No house there. We had to buy a RV, and we lived in the RV for a while. And then we just set our hand on the plow and started working and never stopped. Every penny that we made from the park, we just reinvested it back into the park. We never really went on vacation, never spent much money, never saved money. We believed in ourselves, so we just reinvested all of our time and our money back into the park. So we did that. In fact, we even refinanced in 4 years, in 3 years, no, in 4 years, we had refinanced the park 3 times after our purchase. So we had 4 loans going within 4 years. Because as we kept improving the park, we built up equity, we built up the value, we were able to borrow against it to continue more improvements, and we just kept repeating the cycle. We didn't set out to do that. It's just the way everything kind of came together and made sense. So we racked up a lot of debt, and we never really got to see any of the profit because it all went back into the park. We had no intention of ever selling that park. We really didn't think about it, but I guess in the back of our minds, we thought, if our kids didn't want it when they got older, we would eventually sell it when we retired. But those first few years, it was a lot of work. And one problem by continuing investing into the park was when it got to the size where the potential buyer, the market of potential buyers, was a lot smaller. You weren't going to be able to find a mom and pop like us that would be able to come in and buy the park. So again, we hadn't really ever thought about selling, but that was one of the challenges, if we did consider it, we were going to face. So COVID came along, and after we were shut down for a while, we were able to open up, and business was going crazy. And every year, we were setting records every year. We were already growing, but then after COVID, just kind of put more gasoline on that fire. And business was great. In fact, we actually struggled to keep up, and it was weird because business had took off, But then our employees, and we, in the very beginning, we were able to do all the mowing. We were able to do all the pumping out of the RVs. We were able to do all the cleanings of the showers and the bathrooms. We were able to staff the office. We lifeguarded the beach. We did all of that. But as we kept growing and we adding more things, we added cabins, we added a creamery slash quasi restaurant, which we never even had staff to really fully get that going. Our demand for staff increased. But at COVID, some of the staff we had just didn't work out, and we struggled to find new people. We were used to able to hire teenagers, but then all the theme parks and everybody else in the hospitality summer business were going, instead of paying like $10 an hour, they started paying $15 an hour plus bonuses, and we couldn't compete with that. So even though business was great, we were already running on low, and we just completely got burnt out to the fact where I didn't know I could do it anymore. So in the midst of all of that during COVID, I started watching a lot of people on YouTube, following people on YouTube for whatever various things I was into. And after thinking about it, I realized, a lot of stories we have from owning a campground, a lot of them are funny, but a lot of them are educational. We made a lot of wrong decisions along the way. We made a lot of right decisions along the way, and we learned a lot. There's videos out there how to dig a pond and how to stock a pond or a lake. You didn't see many videos out there how to refurbish a bathroom house, or if you're going to add a laundry room to your business, what type of machines you should use or how big you should make it. We put in a splash park. You didn't see much on that. We put in a commercial playground. We did a lot of that ourselves. And then the electric, we learned a lot about the best way to wire a park. And there's people out there you could pay for that knowledge, but it wasn't available on YouTube that I could find. And and we had met owners that were families that owned parks, but we had never seen anybody on social media or YouTube or whatever creating content about that. So I had the bright idea that, hey, we'll just start documenting, like when we bought golf carts, we were going to rent them out. Was that a good decision, or should we flip them and sell them? I didn't know. We bought a cabin, and we went through the whole process of debating between park models and cabins, and then stick built or true log. And so I made a couple of videos about all of that, and began this channel. And then it was not my passion. Video making is not my passion. Creating content is not my passion. Editing for sure is not my passion. And I'm not good at any of those things. So between not being my passion and not being good at it, I just stopped doing videos, and just worried about the business. And then we got to the point where we decided, hey, we got to sell, because we just can't do this anymore. We were just at the end of our rope. And fortunately, another side effect of COVID, I talked a little bit earlier about how the potential buyers for a campground of our size had diminished. Well, during COVID, there was a lot of investors that had properties, multifamily units or single family homes, and there was a moratorium on rent, and they couldn't collect rent, even though people, could possibly still pay it. They didn't have to pay it. So one, they weren't getting a return on their investment, and two, the prices of real estate started increasing. So now they weren't necessarily bringing in the cash they used to, and now their value, the equity they had in these properties, was starting to skyrocket. So a lot of investors were getting out of residential properties and getting into campgrounds and RV parks. It, for the most part, during 2008 was a recession-proof business. So, and big COVID was going crazy with we know what our gross was. Everybody, all the campgrounds around us were seeing record attendance. So now there was more buyers, and one benefit to us, it was driving up the price of campgrounds. And campgrounds around us that sold for, below $1 million were now worth twice that. So between being burned out and then realizing, hey, this might be a good time to cash out, I had a conversation with my CPA and said, hey, what would that look like if we sold the park? And This is where I kind of got a rude awakening, a quick lesson on capital gains. I left my cheat sheet at home, so I'm going to pick up the video and talk about what our options were here in front of the computer so I can give you the right information.
Okay, I am back at the house now, and truth be told, it is actually 6 months later from that last video. So it has been almost a whole year since this whole fiasco happened. I thought I was ready to start making content again, but I didn't have it in me, and now I'm really trying to get motivated again. I actually have filmed some of the projects I've done this past year. I just have been super lazy about making content, editing it and stuff. So I'm going to try to get back here at doing this. But here is the crash course I had in long term capital gains. If you go to sell a business, whether it's real estate and investment properties, in our case, a campground or a farm, anything like that that's owned by a business, you're paying long term capital gains. If you sell a house you're living in, you're paying personal capital gains rates, but it's different for a business. And in 2023, I think we sold it year before, but the rates change each year. Not the rates, but the bracket. But in 2023, the first, and we're married, file jointly, so that's what I'm using. You can look all this up if you really want to know. But this is just trying to show you the process of what we were thinking. The first $90,000 that you from the sale is not taxed, 0%. Then anything from 90,000 to 550,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. So that $460,000 would come out to $82,500 in tax. And then anything above $550,000 is going to be taxed at 20%. Again, married, file jointly, 2023 tax rates. Now, I'm going to give you some sample numbers. These aren't exact, but it's for illustration purposes. If we bought the campground 10 years ago, $300,000, which was doable, for less than $500,000, you could find a campground, mom and pop size campground. And then now, because we've reinvested, we took out a loan for putting a house on the property. We took out a loan to put sewage throughout the park. We took out a loan to build the cabins. We took out a loan to build the restaurant. So we had loan or brand new equipment. So we acquired all this debt, but it also made the campground more valuable. So now, 7 years later, we sell it for $2 million. We owe now, let's just say $1.1 million. So that's a $900,000 profit. So in my head, I'm thinking, hey, we could make $900,000 from this, and that's, a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but for 7 years, we never had a paycheck. We weren't on payroll. We never went on vacation. We rarely ate out. We had one vehicle when we bought the park. Had 250,000 miles on it. And eventually, when we got pregnant with our third child, we got a minivan, and that had 125,000 miles on it. Paid cash, so we didn't have any debt. The house and utilities were part of the campground, so we didn't have to pay for that. So, pretty much savings from when we sold our house previously, we were able to live off of. But through all those years of sacrificing, every penny we could find, we put back into the park. Now, one downside about that is because we were LLC and it was passed through income, let's say the park did $200,000 in profit one year, but we spent $200,000 in projects. So our bank account would show zero because we made 200 and we sold and we spent 200. Well, with taxes, you can depreciate some of that, but you can't depreciate everything. There's different schedules. So we would still show a profit of, let's just say $100,000. So even though we had no money in the bank, now we owe all this tax at the end of the year on $100,000. And we have, because it's passed through, you have self-employment tax. I think it's 15%. That's what, if you're on payroll, that's your FICA, your Social Security, and Medicare. You're paying that in addition to your state and local taxes. We pay tens of thousands of dollars of taxes every year, especially with real estate. So even though we never really made money, we were paying taxes every year. Now that we're selling it, we get to pay taxes on everything from that initial purchase price to the sales price. Doesn't matter what debt you have. Doesn't matter you took money that had already been taxed reinvested it to get that value, and now you're going to be taxed again on it. That's just the way it works. So in this example, if you sold it for $2 million, then that's $1.7 million that you're going to have capital gains on. First 90s tax free, then you're going to pay $82,500 to up to $550, and then you're going to pay $230,000 on that difference. So altogether, that's $312,000, $500. So now instead of $900,000, you're really coming away with less than $600. And then you also have depreciation recapture. Now, I never been in this situation before, so I was ignorant. But I know a lot of times in business, people are like, hey, we need to buy this piece of equipment, or we need to invest here to help lower our tax liability. Well, that's great. And we did that, and we depreciated a lot of stuff for that. And that's what helps you lower that tax liability every year. But when you go to sell the business, now you have to recapture all of that. And now if it's like, the vehicle or something, and it's lost all its value, then and you sell it and you can prove that, well, now you're not going to owe anything on it. But when we invest $100,000 in electrical or in sewage or in a new building, it actually maintained its value. It made our park even more valuable, and that's why we did it. Putting those cabins in there brought in more income. So now, and again, I don't want to get too far into this because I'm not a tax guy, but it just shocked me when my accountant said, now you have to recapture like $200,000. It's going to be treated as ordinary income. Even though that's not connected necessarily to the sale, that's just something I wasn't expecting. So now I'm like, wow, that's okay. That's not, we'll be able, we're not going to be able, we're in our 40s. We're not going to be able necessarily to retire forever because we didn't have a 401k. We didn't have, college savings. We didn't have any IRAs. Every penny we had, we could find, we invested in ourselves, into our business. We bet on ourselves because we knew that was going to give us the biggest rate of return. So now, family of 5, that's, we weren't, it's not like hitting the lottery, we knew we would still have, to either start another business or to get jobs. And that's the other thing. If we both, my wife and I, would have had worked full time for 7 years, and if we didn't have rent or mortgage and utilities, and we didn't go on vacation, and we lived frugally, one car, did all that, and if we put all of our money for 7 years aside, we'd probably still be in the same boat, maybe even better off, honestly, financially. So it is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But if any Joe Schmo out there, you watching this, if you do the work for a season, for us it was 7 years, and you live way below your means, and you just reinvest in yourself or whatever it is that you're doing, your business, it's doable. For sure, it's doable. And that's how we got to right here. And the one other thing I want to say is, so that you understand what we were thinking, this was in the early summer of 2021. I went and saw my accountant. And after he showed me all of this, he said, well, Brian, are you watching the news? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, are you familiar with Build Back Better? We had a new administration, new Congress, and they were trying to get the votes for Build Back Better. And I'm like, yeah, I saw that they want to do something with the capital gains. He's like, yeah, they want to double the top rate. So for us to be 20%, it'd go up to, I think it was like 42 or 43, maybe 45%. And the reason for that is because the rich, people that are making over $550,000 on long-term capital gains, if they're selling stocks or whatever, are not paying their fair share. Well, for us, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we were selling this business. But for that day, and only that day, we were going to be in the top 1%. And we needed to pay our fair share. So instead of paying $312,000, now we would have had to pay $600,000. And when you consider that, okay, we owed 1.1 million, sell it for 2, we owe 1.1, we have another $200,000 income because of depreciation, so that's only $700,000, and now we have to write a check for $600,000 for long-term capital gains. And in our situation, at least that one you're coming out with $100,000 at the end of the day. In our situation, it was negative. If they would have passed that and had raised that rate that high, even though we built that business sevenfold from what we purchased it, I would have had to spend money to Uncle Sam to sell it. It would have cost me to sell it. And I was like, wow, we got to sell it today. I'm going to put the for sale sign up today. And he told me, well, not only are they trying to pass that, but they also want to make it retroactive. So even if you sold your business earlier this year, or possibly even the year before, they're going to come after you for that tax. And I said, there's no way. That's not constitutional. There's no way they could do that. And he showed it to me. That's what was in the legislation. That's what they were trying to do. So I started flipping out. But he's like, but here's the thing. Have you ever heard of 1031 exchange? And I said, no, what is that? And he explained it to me. You can reinvest if you're selling a business, in our case, a campground or, a farm or house. You can reinvest that sale into another like kind property. And that used to be very liberal. You could buy an airplane with it. But when Trump did the Tax and Jobs Act or whatever it was, they narrowed it because it was being abused by a lot of people. They really narrowed it down. So we could buy real estate, we could buy a farm. In our case, we ended up buying timber property because we were doing firewood at the campground. It was making money. I enjoyed doing it. Land always has value, and where we were, it was increasing value pretty rapidly. And then I didn't want to farm corn and soybeans. I don't have to buy the equipment. I don't have to get into all of that. It's very expensive. But timber is a crop, and for the most part, you can be hands off. And if you want to, you can manage it, but you don't have to. So it was really attractive for us to the idea of having property that would only increase in value over time, and timber that's only going to increase, not just the sale price of the timber, but the size of the timber as it grows. It's only going to increase. So we started looking for timber properties. We started in Tennessee, looked at a couple large checks there, because here's the other thing. That $1.1 million debt in my example, if we don't replace that debt with other debt, it's going to be treated as income, and you're going to have to pay that top 20% tax on it. So even if you're doing a 1031 exchange, so for example, if I take that $2 million from sale, pay off the $1.1 million, that gives us $900,000 to play with. If I go give that $900,000 and buy a property for $900,000, I'm still going to owe capital gains, all three brackets, 0, 15, and 20% on that $1.1 million. So we wanted to be debt free. We didn't want to have a $7,000-8,000 mortgage payment every month, but we also didn't want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. So we had to replace all of that debt. And the properties in Tennessee we looked at didn't work out. We stopped by on the way home to Ohio and looked at a couple in Kentucky, and they were smaller, which wasn't getting us to the numbers we needed to be. But ultimately, we found those properties led us to the one property we bought, kind of our anchor property. And then once we had a contract on that, we went ahead and bought a couple smaller properties, all within a couple miles of each other, so that we could satisfy replacing that debt. It wasn't necessarily how we thought it was all going to work out, but we couldn't stomach spending all that money to Uncle Sam. So the good news is, and I don't know if I explained this in my other videos, I talked about this, that in a 1031 exchange, you continue to roll over. You can keep doing exchanges. You're deferring all that capital gain forever until you stop doing a 1031 exchange. So if you bought a small house and then increased the value, sold it, rolled it into a larger house, did the same thing until you pretty much have an apartment building or whatnot. At the end of the line, if you have a $20 million building, you're going to owe capital gains on everything from day one. However, if you pass and it goes to your heirs, they don't have to pay any of that capital gains. Again, I'm not a tax guy. This is my understanding of it. I'm sure there would be other taxes involved, death and inheritance taxes. But when he told me that, I said, okay, I think that's the way I want to go. But again, you can't touch the money. Anything you touch, you're going to have to pay taxes on. So even though we sold the business and we had a lot of equity in it, we had to reinvest that. We couldn't like cash out and have that. So our money is still tied up. It was tied up in the campground for 7 years, and now it's tied up in timber property. But that is where I'm going to pick up with my next video. I just wanted to explain, I'm sorry I went so long, how two, goofy people like us and our kids, found ourselves in this situation, that this was even possible to happen to us. We've been blessed. We worked our tails off for a season, and we were blessed to even be in this position. So I'm not complaining at all, but I just wanted to take you on the journey so that you could kind of understand how we got here. And now in my next video, I'm going to tell you about one of the worst days of my life.